The Holy Gospel this day according to Matthew. Jesus said to the disciples, "For it is as if a man going on a journey summoned his slaves and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. The one who had received the 5 talents went off at once and traded with them and made 5 more talents. In the same way, the one who had 2 talents made 2 more talents. But the one who had received the 1 talent went off and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those slaves came and settled his accounts with them. Then the one who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 more talents, saying, 'Master, you handed me over 5 talents. See, I have made 5 more talents.' His master said to him, 'Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master.' And the one with the 2 talents also came forward, saying, 'Master, you handed me over 2 talents. See, I have made 2 more talents.' His master said to him, 'Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master.' Then the one who had received the 1 talent also came forward, saying, 'Master, I knew that you are a harsh man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you did not scatter seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, have what is yours.' But his master replied, 'You wicked and lazy slave, you knew, did you, that I reap where I did not sow, and gather where I did not scatter? Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and on my return would have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one with the 10 talents. For to all those who have, more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. For as for this worthless slave, throw him out into outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.' This is the gospel of the Lord."
Good morning, good people of God, questioners, seekers, and my personal favorite, the godless heathens who just can't seem to leave church community. You're my favorite. We all have a part to play in this grand, creative, meaning-making space. Perhaps we'll end up with quite a few more talents together than we will individually. Has the church ever made you feel unclean? Perhaps you divorced, or perhaps you're a woman, and that was not welcome in your congregation of origin. Perhaps you're simply a theological seeker that doesn't seem to fit just about anywhere you go, even if you've got friends and engagements across churches and denominations and faiths all across the city. Do people give you the side eye when you volunteer to help serve communion, like myself in my home congregation on the eastern side of the Cascade Curtain? Is your communion line a little bit smaller, a little bit shorter, because people just aren't sure they want to receive communion from you? If you're feeling yourself internally pausing, looking upon this bright pink drag thing, congratulations. You're partially responsible. In the fall of 2021, I was here at University Lutheran visiting with my friend Bitta, who used to sing in the choir and engage with the quilting ladies. And that was the same day that I was chatting with a recruiter at PLTS, and he was trying to convince me to arrive to yes, to enter seminary. Well, maybe the environment had something to do with it. You don't seem too afraid of a rainbow. Since that fateful day of saying yes to seminary, I've continued to get myself into a little bit more trouble. Having worked in the streets of San Francisco with our unhoused neighbors and the queer community. And indeed, there are some people who have stories of being told that they are unclean. So unclean and unapproachable and scary that when people walk in the streets, they look away. Perhaps seemingly a light violence, but a violence of looking away nonetheless. When each day your interactions with others are an aversion of eyes, one's sense of one's humanity and place in the family of things diminishes. Of course, I posit too that the humanity of those looking away also diminishes. When Bishop Knudsen was here in Western Washington in the 90s, already advocating for queer inclusion, I did find myself in Douglas County on the other side of the Columbia River, feeling quite isolated and alone, though perhaps there wasn't fire and brimstone being preached from our, rather white bread, mainline Lutheran pulpit. There was certainly a whole lot of don't ask, don't tell. A different kind of the violence of looking away. That which we are afraid to speak. And I remember one Christmas morning, perhaps my junior year in high school, when my pastors, thinking that they were quite so progressive and were going to do something new, decided to have worship on Christmas morning. Liturgical reform. And a handful of us, probably about 10, showed up, I by myself, my parents at home, and found myself sitting underneath that elongated mid-century cross that was hanging from the front of the sanctuary, sitting in a circle with the other attendees, beginning to cry. And a woman sitting next to me who had sung with me in our folk choir since I was in 6th grade gently reached out her hand and touched me. She may not have known what was going on inside my head, my heart, or she may have had some suspicions. But that touch was a blessing that I didn't feel I had previously experienced in such a place. It's quite unfortunate that more communities don't understand the Bible as God's DEI statement of diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. Let us make disciples of all nations. Not only those people who are considered other and outside the circle, whether it's 10 on a Christmas morning or a congregation of this size or anywhere we might want to put a boundary at what we call the Church Universal. And also let us not forget to welcome all of the nations swirling inside of each of us. Those parts of us that we may still question whether or not our communities and beyond our communities, God might also welcome and bless. Don't we all so deeply desire to be told that we too are beloved? Yes. A few years back, I had the great privilege of starting Drag Church in the Castro for Pride Month to claim public space for queer faith. In the Castro queer bastion, perhaps so that faith might be more visible and hence offer ministry to those who might feel themselves unwelcome, but also as a ministry of visibility to the church. We begin each Pride Month Street Eucharist at 18th and Castro. And 18th and Castro, that corner, of course, like many intersections forming a cross, is also known as the LGBTQ community shrine, where since the early 80s and before, but especially upon the advent of the AIDS epidemic, community members have been memorialized. Pictures, letters, mementos attached to the wall of what used to be Hibernia Bank. Often with people speaking and remembering, maybe pouring out a little bit of whiskey on the ground, their saints. Another addition to the cloud of witnesses. Perhaps followed by a visit to the gay bars around and down the street, where more memories are shared and the real stories emerge. Of course, this tradition, this ritual beginning, when such memorials were not welcome in houses of worship, where perhaps at best, because bodies were not also welcome, someone's ashes might be sent to be spread in the church courtyard or to be buried in the columbarium. We were so unclean. And there was a silence about us, unwilling to speak and push boundaries. In fact, in the context of the AIDS epidemic, we emerged, some of us with the slogan, "Silence equals death." And so today, looking upon our reading from Acts today and a snippet of God's DEI statement, diversity, equity, and inclusion, I invite the ways this congregation might consider that reaching out and touching those who are still crying. It is one thing, of course, to festoon our sanctuary with rainbows, and another, more public witness, when some of us again begin to die of violence, of legislation, those who are trapped in small towns in the Dakotas or Florida, who don't have enough money to escape to the coasts or to find a place where cities might assist them in their gender affirmation. Let us together create more holy ground and proclaim all that God proclaims clean. Progressive quietism is not a virtue. and let us get our bodies involved. The example, of course, amidst that DEI statement that we have, an example of Jesus on the cross, an incarnation that says that spirit and body can go together. And so all those internal parts of your bodily, carnal experience that you might still think unclean can find affirmation, perhaps, in that reaching out, in mutual blessing, in community. Many have asked me why I have persisted stubbornly with a long, winding path through seminary and candidacy, sometimes paused for great lengths of time, years away. And I say, well, I'm a spiritual swimmer. And I have realized that if I stay under the water, I will drown. That the air that I need to breathe is above the surface. And that water is often the world of the church. And so I leave it, and then I return again, swimming under the water, this time hopefully trying to show others who might also need air that there is another possibility. We can bring heaven and earth together if we're willing to bless, to breathe, to not look away. Amen.